Every day, you take about 20,000 breaths. It's an automatic rhythm, a biological reflex that traces all the way back to our earliest ancestors, breathing the crisp, unfiltered air of dense woodlands. To support those 20,000 breaths, a massive biological mechanism operates constantly in the background. The leaves and bark of trees act like sweeping, porous filters, actively pulling carbon dioxide and harmful particulates out of the atmosphere. While the forests clean the air, rivers act as a vast circulatory network. They carry fresh water, carve out habitats, and distribute the vital nutrients required to keep local flora and fauna alive and growing. Biologists and economists refer to these massive operations as ecosystem services. The planet is essentially performing highly complex, large-scale engineering tasks, filtering air, purifying water, stabilizing soil, entirely free of charge. Our physical baseline relies completely on this unpaid infrastructure remaining intact. If the local ecology works correctly, human biology thrives alongside it. But when heavy industrialization introduces high volumes of synthetic chemicals, sulfur dioxide, and fine particulate matter, that natural machinery faces a load it never evolved to handle. The scale of output simply outpaces biological absorption. Look at historical heavy smog events, where concentrated airborne pollutants would completely saturate a city center. The local trees, rivers, and soil could no longer process the sheer volume of material hanging in the atmosphere. This creates what is effectively a filtration vacuum. The environment's capacity to clean the air is maxed out, leaving thousands of tons of microscopic toxins suspended in the breathable air layer. Those suspended particles obey the laws of physics and biology. They don't vanish. They continue drifting, drawn inward by the constant suction of the nearest available air intakes. When nature's free filtration network collapses, the task of filtering those dangerous toxins is forcefully transferred to the lungs of whatever population happens to live nearby. At a microscopic level, particulate matter known as PM2.5 is so small that it easily glides past the hairs in our noses and the mucus in our throats, traveling deep into the respiratory tract. These particles reach the alveoli, the tiny air sacs where oxygen exchange happens. Because they are a fraction of the width of a human hair, they breach the alveolar wall entirely and slip straight into the bloodstream. Once inside the circulatory network, they trigger biological alarms throughout the body. The immune system reacts to these foreign invaders by launching a systemic inflammatory response, irritating blood vessels and stressing the heart. This internal damage is a direct continuation of the external ecological breakdown. The exact same pollution that overwhelmed the forest canopy is now actively overwhelming the human vascular system. The resulting data is measurable and stark. Long-term exposure correlates with sharp spikes in severe asthma attacks, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and acute cardiovascular events. Environmental pollution acts as a highly aggressive, active pathogen that physically degrades human tissue over time. Because these ecological failures manifest as human disease, the endpoint for environmental degradation is always the local hospital. Medical professionals consistently track a direct mathematical relationship. On days when local air quality indexes plummet, respiratory and cardiac admissions climb. This creates an exhausting cycle for nurses and physicians. They spend their shifts managing chronic coughing, administering oxygen, and treating severe inflammation caused by conditions entirely outside the clinical walls. Treating a patient's inflamed lungs while returning them to an environment filled with toxic smog is like bailing water from a sinking boat without ever patching the hole in the hull. Healthcare workers have quietly become the most direct witnesses to global ecological decline, operating as the default safety net for a compromised planet. A hospital is not designed to be the primary filter for a city's air supply. It stands at the very end of a failing chain, society's absolute last line of defense against environmental toxicity. Depending exclusively on medical intervention to fix populations sickened by their surroundings is a deeply reactionary, unsustainable strategy. The financial burden of long-term treatments, hospital stays, and lost productivity runs into the trillions annually, to say nothing of the physical exhaustion experienced by both patients and providers. Relying on emergency rooms to process the effects of poor air quality guarantees that we are always arriving too late to solve the actual problem. This requires a shift in how we approach conservation. Protecting natural ecosystems is a highly effective, urgent form of preventative human medicine. When a community rallies to plant trees, clean up a riverway, or enforce stricter emission standards, they are directly improving their baseline health metrics by restoring the natural filtration system. Urban green spaces actively cool city blocks, filter out PM 2.5, and lead to a measurable drop in local respiratory diseases and cardiovascular stress. Human biology and planetary biology are deeply linked components of a single interdependent system. What affects the atmosphere directly shapes the health of the human bloodstream. By recognizing that our infrastructure starts with the soil, water, and trees around us, we can ensure that a healthy planet naturally produces healthy people.